Hello and welcome back. I wanted to share some tips today for what to do when and if, but falling happens. So when we fall down. I wrote about this in my newsletter a couple of months ago, and it was, I think, my most popular newsletter to date in terms of how many emails I got and how many times people shared that they forwarded it. So it's something that I think is useful and helpful, and I wanted to share it with as many people as possible. So, what do we do when we fall down? And I'm approaching this from a somatic experiencing, somatic coaching, nervous system trauma perspective. And I think it's helpful to remind us that not everything that could be traumatic is traumatic, right? So not every car accident is going to be traumatic. Not every fall is going to be traumatic. You could have a fall and then just feel just fine and dandy immediately after and thereon after. And sometimes a fall or an accident or whatever it may be can have a more lasting effect. And it's easier to prevent something from being traumatic than it is to resolve it once it has become traumatic. So I want to share some things you can do, and you can use them on yourself, or if you happen to be in the vicinity of someone else, it could be a stranger, it could be a student, it could be a family member. If they have a fall and you happen to be nearby, things you can offer, suggestions you can offer them to just minimize the chances of that incident having a traumatic residual effect on their and your system. Okay, so first I'll share, this is inspired by a couple days ago when I took a really kind of dramatic, but also a little bit comical tumble. So I was rushing out the door to go to my ceramics class, and I have these boots that you don't have to tie them because they're tall boots and they have laces, but I tie the laces in such a way that I don't actually have to lace the boots. And so I rarely lace the boots. And I was rushing out the door because I was excited to go to class and I was running a little bit late. And this is the front door, and I have a couple cement steps. And one of the laces from the right boot got hooked and caught in like the little hook that you wrap the laces on in the other boot. And so this string became entangled in this hook on the other boot. So my feet were essentially like tied together. And you know how falling goes. If you've ever fallen, you know it's like slow, fast at the same time. It's like slow motion and also so fast. So this whole thing happened really quickly, and I took this really gnarly tumble. But I somehow had the wits about me to land in the grass. And I was okay. I was okay. I'm okay now. I had really like minor bruising. I mean, my ego was like a tiny bit bruised, but mostly totally fine. And I attribute my being fine to the fact that I did do a couple things. I did a couple things in the moment and later that day, later that night, that really helped me. And I don't know if that fall would have had residual effects on me. I really don't know. But I didn't really feel like risking it. You know, I have this information, I have these tools, and I'm going to use them if and when I can. And I'm going to share them with you. There's 5 steps, 5 things to do. So number 1 is stay on the ground. So when and if you fall, and if it's safe, like if you're not in a road or traffic or, you know, cars or bikes are going to hit you, if you're able to stay on the ground, stay on the ground. So it sounds so simple, but it can actually be tricky, right? Because sometimes when we fall, I know it sounds silly, but it's true. Sometimes we feel a little embarrassed. Like it's kind of hurts our pride and we just want to like jump up and pretend like everything's fine, right? Like I get it. I've done that. And If you stay down, if you stay on the ground, it prevents your body, your physical body, like your tissues, from having to brace. You have the support of the ground beneath you, and your body doesn't have to do the bracing to hold you. So if you stay on the ground, it can prevent this bracing, which I'm using the word bracing, but you could use the word tension or muscle tightness. It prevents that from coming in. Not always, but it does a pretty good job of setting you up for not having that residual bracing. So stay down. How long do you stay down? Probably not as long as you think, right? Like it probably like falling, it's like slow motion. Staying on the ground might feel like slow motion, but you probably only need to stay down for like a minute or two, maybe like 5, right? Which I get can feel like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's 5 minutes, like well spent, well worth it. So when I fell, I was alone and I just stayed on the ground in like literally on the ground because it's on dirt or grass. I stayed down for, I don't know, I'm gonna say like 90 seconds, 2 minutes max, really not long. And there was no one around, so I just kind of sat there. I was like, okay. And then once I started to kind of get my bearings, I was like, okay, I'm okay. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go to class. I left the house to go to ceramics class. I'm just gonna go to ceramics class. Okay, so number one is stay on the ground. Number two is let whatever wants to happen, happen. So after I got up, I dusted myself up. I was holding like a travel mug of tea, which like went flying and landed by my tree. So I had to walk up, get my coffee mug with my tea. I was like, okay, it's still full. I'm gonna bring it with me to class. I went and got in the car and I just sat there. I was ready to get off the ground, but I wasn't ready to drive. So I sat in the car, and then after maybe like 5-10 seconds, I just started to laugh hysterically. Like I was laughing like a crazy person. And so I didn't plan it. I didn't know that's what was going to happen, but I just let it happen. That was how my body needed to release all of that energy. It was laughing. It's not always going to be laughing. It may not be laughing for you. It could be shaking. It could be crying. It could be like, like a scream or a yell. I don't know. You might have like, I think it's very likely we kind of have our go-tos, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be the same. So number two is just let what wants to happen, happen. For me, it was laughing. For you, it might be something else. Okay. Number three is to connect with other people that are friendly or comfortable or safe. And that doesn't mean they have to be like your dear friends and family. It can be anyone that is like, okay, this is a person that's present and I can trust them. If you're falling in public, it could be a stranger. Like, does a stranger walk up to you and check in on you? Like, let yourself notice this other person to the extent that you're able. Like, notice, okay, here's another person and connect with that person. So I was going to ceramics class, which I was going to be surrounded by about a dozen people that I knew a little bit. It was like week 7 in the course. So we kind of all knew each other a little bit, but it's not like everyone's just kind of focused on their projects. We really don't talk that much in class. And so I didn't want to walk into class and just be like, I just fell down. I just didn't want to be that person. So I made a phone call on my way, and I called someone that I trusted. I said, I just want to talk about what happened. I didn't need anything from them. I just wanted to get it out. I also wanted to make sure that it didn't come out in a time or place that I wasn't comfortable with, right? Like I didn't want to overshare without wanting or meaning to overshare. So number 3 is connect to others. So not only does connecting to others activate our safe and social part of our nervous system, it really just lets our body attune to safety, right? Like, let's say you fall and I was talking to someone just this morning who we were just kind of comparing fall stories. And I told her about my fall, and she told me about how she fell on a hike last week and she slipped on a slippery rock. And then she was there, there were four of them. And then she kind of stayed down and someone helped her up. Her friend's husband helped her up. And then they all sat and just like took that as an opportunity to stop and have a break. And so if you're stopping to talk to people and have a drink of water and have a break, like you're okay, right? Like you wouldn't be able to do that if you weren't okay. So when we stop and we have a drink, and when we stop and we talk to someone, it really sends the message to your physical body that you're safe. Because we can know it intellectually, but not always know it biologically or physiologically at the nervous system level. So that's one of the reasons we connect to others. Okay, number 4 is rest. It doesn't always get to be in that moment. It might come later. But what I did is that night, Monday night, when I fell, I just went to bed a little earlier. So normally I probably go to bed at 11 and I went to bed at 10. And I stayed in bed a little bit longer. So instead of getting up at 6:45, I stayed in bed till I think it was like 7:20. So not a huge difference, but I just let myself rest. I just let myself be in bed and sleep a little bit longer. Magic happens when we're sleeping. Magic happens in our brain, magic happens in our body. I don't fully understand everything that happens in our sleep, and I don't think anyone truly, truly understands all the magic that happens in our sleep. But magic happens, so let yourself rest. I'm gonna have this as like 4B, because I think it goes along with resting, but also I think nutrition matters. Like, I think nutrition always matters, but let yourself be nourished. So have a good meal, have a good dinner, have a good healthy snack, have a good breakfast, whatever it is, like let your body rest, and then also give yourself the nutrients that your body needs to heal. And this might sound a little silly or overkill, but like your body needs good nutrients to heal. And going back to what I said in the beginning, like trauma is easier to prevent than it is to recover from. It's 100% possible to recover from it, but it is easier if we kind of stop it on the front end, right? I always think of it as like when I have yogurt, like it's so, this is such a silly metaphor, but it's so much easier to clean the yogurt out of the bowl right away when it's still kind of, like wet and soft. But if you let it dry and get cakey, like it's still, you 100% you're going to clean that bowl, but it's going to take a little bit more time and a little bit more elbow grease. Okay, we're on to the 5th and final thing, to what to do when we fall. So I'm going to do a quick recap. Number 1, stay on the ground. Number 2, let what wants to happen happen. So like, don't judge yourself if you cry or shake or laugh. Number 3, connect to others. Number 4, rest, and that includes eating well. And number 5, be gentle on yourself. Like, I think this is kind of ingrained in all of them, is to just be gentle with yourself and not judge yourself for what your body is doing, because your body's just doing what it needs to do. But also be gentle with yourself. Like when I got to ceramics class on Monday night, like I showed up late. I'm not usually late, and I probably looked a little like frazzled. I don't know, I'm guessing. But I just was like, okay, maybe it's possible I was a little weird. I kind of was like, kind of really only talked to the people like to my right and to my left. And I don't know, I was just kind of reflecting on, I was like, I think I might have been a little socially awkward. And that's okay, right? Like, I'm not going to judge myself for that. So don't judge yourself for needing a little extra sleep. Don't judge yourself for or being maybe a little off your game or a little awkward or just not the best. At one point, we were listening to, there's only like two CDs. We have, it's an old school setup in the ceramics class. There's a CD player and there's like two CDs. And the one jazz CD that we were playing that night was like really kind of wild. It was like these saxophone solos that sounded like crying. It was wild. And so everyone was kind of like, we need to change the CD. So one girl was going to play something on her phone, and she said, I can either play like 90s rock, which is kind of like yacht rock, or soothing classical. And she put on the 90s like yacht rock, and she said, is this okay? And I was like, in my body, I was like, I cannot handle this yacht rock right now. Like it is just not gonna be good for me. And so I just said, if it's okay and if classical is still on the table, I'd prefer that. And she's like, oh yeah, no problem. And so just be gentle with yourself. I was like, I'm not gonna judge myself for speaking up, and I am gonna speak up. And I'm gonna let myself, have what I need. So I hope that helps you. I believe that it will. I think it can be really helpful and really powerful to have these tools. You can use them for yourself. I did. I used them for myself on Monday. And there might be some of them that just come like super naturally to you, and that's amazing. I just know that sometimes we also get conditioned to override our natural impulses. Like we might instinctually know to stay down, but we kind of get conditioned to pop back up. So just a reminder, permission to stay down. Okay, can I do a quick recap one more time? Okay, stay on the ground. Let what wants to happen happen. Connect to others. Rest and nourish yourself, and be gentle on yourself. Okay. I hope you don't have any falls, but it's also just a natural, normal part of life. So if you do, I hope these things are helpful to you. And feel free to like and subscribe so you get updated when I make new videos. All right. Stay in touch, be well, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.